Madam Deputy Speaker.
The Home Secretary knows that she does not refer to honourable members by name directly. Thank you. Home Secretary.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a moment to pay tribute to the work of the security and intelligence services, the counter-terror police and all those who work on preventing and countering extremism and terror threats. The work that they do is difficult, but it saves lives, and we owe them thanks. Extremism is a stain on our society, perpetrated in the name of one ideology or another. It feeds on fear. Its purpose is to tap into vulnerabilities, to exploit people, and to drive us apart, to force us to hate rather than to love, and to divide us rather than recognise what we share in common.
Is she talking about the Conservative Party here?
The appalling Manchester attack on children at a concert, the attack on Fishmongers Hall on London Bridge, the murder of some of our own colleagues, David Amis by an Islamist extremist, Joe Cox by a far-right extremist, and most recently the bomb attempt against the Dover Border Centre as well. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, we should condemn terrorist and extremist activity wherever it comes from. Fighting against it is a core part of our national security. It is also a core part of defending our democracy. And the resilience that we build against those extremists is about standing up for what we have in common and always challenging hatred and extremism wherever we might find it. The Prevent programme that we are discussing today is an extremely important programme. Its purpose is early intervention to prevent radicalisation and extremism and to prevent, ultimately, terror threats to all of us. That is why we support it and want always to see the work on prevention of terrorism and prevention of extremism improved, updated and scrutinised. But the review should have been a great opportunity, and that opportunity is missed. Instead of being a way to build consensus, it has instead been mishandled. Prevent is just one aspect of a wider counter-extremism strategy, or it should be just one aspect of a wider counter-extremism strategy and a wider counter-terrorism strategy. It only works if it is located in those, and the focus on it today, as if it is only the one aspect, is too narrow and means that it fails to tackle the pressures that we face. Prevent is about voluntary engagement to tackle radicalisation, but it needs to be part of the wider counter-extremism strategy. However, the Home Secretary and the Government has not updated their counter-extremism strategy since 2015.
Too busy dinghy spotting by the sounds of it.
Likewise, on the elements of the contest strategy that Prevent is a part of, the wider counter-terror strategy, we know on the pursue element, since control orders were abolished, there's been very little use of TPIMs. There are only 2 in force today. On prepare, the Manchester bombing inquiry found serious weaknesses, and on protect, there has been very limited progress on Martin's Law, which is so important. So the Prevent strategy should be part of that wider, updated counter-terror strategy, but also should be part of an updated counter-extremism strategy that we don't have today. The response, instead, the review and its conclusions and her response to it, instead feel very confused. At one point she has said that the focus should be more narrow on those most likely to pose a terrorist threat, but at the same time that they need to focus more on the wider non-violent extremism, and it will be unclear to practitioners what it is they're expected to do. She says that there has been a problem, that it has supported extremist groups in the past, and that she will end that. But I would say to her that her predecessor, the member for Maidenhead, when she did her own Prevent review, said exactly the same thing and said, we will not make these mistakes again, this will not happen. And instead, after 13 years in government, it is unclear what they have been doing. She said there needs to be proper scrutiny and oversight, but the Prevent Oversight Board has not met since 2018. The review says that mental health services have got huge gaps and that Prevent is picking up the strain. Well, we agree there is a serious problem with mental health services having huge huge gaps and not being able to address early intervention. But where is the response to that? Labour has called for mental health practitioners in all secondary schools to provide support, but again, that is missing. Again, it does not seem to address the big increase and the record numbers of teenagers that have been arrested now for terrorist offences. And when she talks about Islamist and far-right extremism, it is very clear Prevent and the wider counter-extremism strategy need to tackle both, and both are changing fast. So Islamist extremism very often now is about single actors and lone actors, not just the organised groups that we saw some years ago. And with far-right extremism, likewise, we have seen very many changes in the way in which those threats take place, and we've seen the rise of new kinds of ideologies and extremist threats, including incels as well. There should be no hierarchy of extremism. The CT experts, the counter-terror police and the experts need to go wherever the evidence takes them. There should be no political sensitivities, no cultural sensitivities at all in any of their work. And we should back them in the work that they do and not try to set in this House what those priorities should be. They need to focus on the evidence. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is an immensely important area, but I would just say to her, will she now agree to do a much wider review of the counter-extremism strategy, to come forward with a proper counter-extremism strategy that can tackle much more widely hateful extremism? And will she recognise that the government has failed by not updating this? And will she also tell us whether she really thinks that her approach to this is going to build consensus, because consensus around a voluntary engagement programme is crucial. And that, I think, is the area where it feels that the Home Secretary and this review have badly let the country down.
Home Secretary.
Get ready for the Leaky Sue inspirational speech of a lifetime. It'll be full of honesty, integrity and professionalism. Hold on to your seats, guys. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I welcome the challenge and I welcome the response from the Labour front bench. It's obviously the responsibility of the government and everyone in this House to choose their words carefully, recognising the sensitivity of this subject, but to ultimately uphold the aim of Prevent, which is to prevent people from becoming radicalised and engaging in terrorism. We cannot do that alone. Communities from which individuals who are of interest to Prevent are an essential part of helping us to identify radicalism and dealing with it effectively. And we must work together collectively in that common goal. The Shadow
Said all that with a straight face and all.
Home Secretary doesn't seem to understand the main point, or one of the main points made by William Shawcross, which is this, that we cannot ignore the seriousness of non-violent extremism and groups which purport to be operating in the name of community cohesion, in the name of Islam, but are actually propagating mendacious and malicious campaigns to discredit Prevent as anti-Muslim and to undermine community cohesion. Let's be clear, just as the independent review is, Cage, for example, is an Islamist group. It has excused and legitimised violence by Islamist terrorists. MEND is an anti-Prevent group with a history of partnering with actors of extremist concern. Now, Prevent has been routinely smeared by such groups as a vehicle for spying on Muslims. And they have slandered those who are working with Prevent, working to combat Islamist extremism. Those people have been slandered as disloyal, sinful, or native informants, derogatory terms which are entirely unacceptable in our free and liberal society. So we must combat those pernicious fallacies, and we must be courageous and muscular in combating that misinformation. And what I may just say is that I do find the lecture from the Labour Party on how to prevent extremism rather rich. That's a Labour Party that sadly was investigated by the Metropolitan Police for anti-Semitic hate crimes. That's a Labour Party that was found by the Equality and Human Rights Commission to have serious failings in addressing anti-Semitism. That's a Labour Party that campaigned to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister. Madam Deputy Speaker.
The Home Secretary knows that she does not refer to honourable members by name directly. Thank you. Home Secretary.
What a bell tap. All I can say is, welcome to the weekend, guys. Hopefully normal service will be resumed. Where come next week, course finished, done and dusted. So all I can say is have a fantastic weekend. Be good. And if you can't be good at it. And have fun. And take care, my friends.